Is he spittin', or is this just nothing? Today, we are talking about yet another one of these top guys on the NHL trade market. Because when it comes to probably the most ununanimous name of the bunch, what is the opposite of unanimous? Non-nanimous? Either way, when it comes to guys like the Trevor Zegerses, when it comes to guys like the Marty Natureses, when it comes to guys like Kent Johnson, everybody can usually agree what these players should roughly go for. Sure, there's some nuance and there are some people who will disagree more than others, but there seems to be a general consensus as to saying, okay, this guy could probably get this pick, and that kind of prospect. This other guy could probably get that kind of player in return. There's a rough ballpark here. But today we are talking about the biggest name on the market that does not have any sort of cohesion at all. Nobody really knows what he could go for, which is why we're making this video here today. Because when it comes to Columbus Blue Jackets forward Patrik Laine, we had ourselves Dan Rosen on NHL.com publish a piece as to how he thinks everything is going to shape up. This is the quote-unquote Patrik Laine trade price getting sent out there online. Now, just in case you needed the update here, Patrik Laine is 26 years old, 6'5", 216, and he's a right-handed left-wing, right-wing player, signed till the end of 2026, making $8.7 million a year. He is making Crosby money. And unfortunately for him, you could say that there was a time when he could have been seen as worth $8.7 million. The 2022-2023 stint that he had, 21-22 as well, he was a point-per-game guy, 50 points, 50 games. But this recent season, he only had 9 points in 18 games. He spent a bunch of time in the NHL's Players Assistance Program, and he was injured. So Patrik Laine and his overall usefulness for the Columbus Blue Jackets kind of went down the drain in 2023-2024. With this in mind, though, we had ourselves opened discussions as to whether or not the Columbus Blue Jackets could find a way to trade him off. Say, all right, he wants a change of scenery. We don't want to be making $8.7 million against the cap for a guy like this. Let's trade him, give him a fresh start, a new opportunity where Laine could hopefully revive his career again, and Columbus will free up some money at the very least. This is where we go over to Dan Rosen's most recent mailbag on NHL.com. Laine trade talks with the Blue Jackets and Rangers Cup chances. Let's go out there and read this piece. It was published earlier in the week on July 9th. Link is going to be in the description if you want to go ahead and read this yourself. Take a look at the question here, asked by Sam B999. They asked Dan Rosen of NHL.com, how do you see a Patrik Laine trade being executed? Is this similar to Evgeny Kuznetsov? Are the Capitals in the mix for Laine? This is what Rosen goes out there and writes. It could be similar to the Evgeny Kuznetsov trade on March 8th to the Carolina Hurricanes. In that trade, the Washington Capitals sent Evgeny Kuznetsov to Carolina for a third-round pick in 2025. Washington also retained 50% of Kuznetsov's salary at $7.8 million AAV. Columbus is likely hoping they could do better in a trade involving Laine. Laine is 26 and Kuznetsov is 32. He was 31 when he was traded. Laine's AAV in his contract is higher at $8.7 million, and he's signed for 2 more seasons, but his upside is greater than Kuznetsov's given his age and goal-scoring ability. The issue is, he remains in the NHL and NHLPA's Player Assistance Program, and it's impossible to determine when or if he'll even be released from that program. Any team acquiring Laine has the right to know exactly what is going on and what his availability will be. That is a big reason why the Blue Jackets have been so unsuccessful in trying to trade him thus far. It's hard to envision a scenario where a team takes on Laine's full AAV. Columbus will have to retain salary to make the move work, but with his age, maybe the Blue Jackets can get a second-round pick, if not a first-round pick, in moving him. As for teams in the mix, that's hard to determine, but the Capitals don't appear to presently have the cap space to take on Laine's AAV, even if it's cut in half to $4.35 million, unless there is clarity on TJ Oshie's future. If Washington has to put him on LTIR, it'll free up $5.75 million off its cap. The other way to do this is to send a player back to Columbus in the trade, but that will likely be a player plus the draft pick, not one or the other. So, when you go over to what Rosen concludes at the beginning of this answer, he talks about how the Patrik Laine trade could be similar to the Evgeny Kuznetsov trade. And if you want to go over the differences, okay, there totally are differences. It's not like, 1-to-1. Kuznetsov's older, he is less good, you could say. He's got a cheaper contract at a lesser term, so it's certainly not the same. But when you think about that Kuznetsov trade, he was traded to Carolina for a third-round pick in the 2025 draft with salary retained. That's it. For Patrik Laine, if you're thinking about him and his $8.7 million a year getting cut in half and getting sent over to another team, if that price is just a second-round pick or a first-round pick, or heck, let's make it a little bit nicer, 2 second-round picks, is that something that entices you to take a chance on this player for the next 2 seasons? If it is only a deal that is 2 years long and whatever 8.7 divided by 2 is, what is that? 8.7 divided by 2, $4.35 million a year. If you're able to get the old Laine back, not the one that was scoring 40 goals back-to-back in the Winnipeg Jets system, but the guy that was a point per game the past 2 seasons before this NHL Players Assistance Program year, then 4-point-something mil is a really good dollar amount for that, especially since Laine is in his mid to later 20s. He's not too old at this point in his career. He's younger than McDavid after all. There is reason to believe that this kind of a price is appropriate. If you wanted to compare it to Kuznetsov, I'd say that there's a little bit more flexibility with Kuznetsov, but there's a lot more upside with Laine. So I don't really see too big of a connection there, although they definitely will be cut from the same cloth. If you're a fan of the Montreal Canadiens, for example, and the price for Laine to go over to the Habs was 2 seconds or a first, is that a bet that you take? Honestly, I'd think for most teams that are supposedly going to be contending for the playoffs, or let's just say even a wild card next season, you gotta think about the assets involved here. Worst case scenario, you lose out on the first round pick. If you finish, let's say 16th overall, you barely make the playoffs or something, then are you willing to depart with the 16th overall pick in the 2025 NHL Draft for 2 years of Patrik Laine and the opportunity to sign him again in 2026? If you think about it, the guy that you take in the draft will probably not be available to you until 2026 in general, so would you rather have your first-round picks be useful in the future, or trade them away for something that could help you out right now, assuming, of course, Patrik Laine is good enough to come back and actually have this success at the NHL level once more? Or is he too much of a risk? Is there too much uncertainty because of the down year he had this season? I don't think it takes a genius to say that the NHL Players Assistance Program isn't really his fault, but when he was playing, he was getting hurt, he was a little inconsistent, and it didn't make for the best performance on the ice, so there's a reason both parties here, Laine and the Blue Jackets, are interested in a change of scenery for him and his services. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Patrik Laine trade price. If it's Laine and salary retained for a first-round pick, how do you feel about that? If it's Laine with salary retained for, let's say, 2 seconds, how do you feel about that? If it's Laine with minimal salary retained, let's say 25% salary retained, and the team getting him has a $6 million AAV cap hit of Laine, what's the price for that? Is it only a second? Is it a second and a third? Is it just a third? Or do you still go as high as a first-round pick? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as to how all of these assets, picks, and players are evaluated in your mind, and what do you think the actual Laine trade will look like? Now, I'm saying that recording this video on the night of July 10th, so by the time this video is uploaded on YouTube, maybe there already is a trade. Maybe the guy's already gotten sent elsewhere, who really knows? But either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.